So I hope everyone is doing well today. We're really excited about this topic. Just so that you all know, we cannot see or hear you. You're essentially in listen only mode. If you have any questions for our panelists, which we really hope you do, just go ahead and use that Q&A function. So type your questions into that, and at the end of each presentation, we'll go ahead and get those questions answered. And if we have time, we'll also have some questions answered by our panelists at the end. So I'm gonna give it just another minute. We only have about half of the people here that are registered, and Facebook is not wanting to go live yet. So all right, well, while we wait for that, I'm gonna go ahead and pop up our welcome poll. So just a few questions, and note, if you are on Facebook, the welcome poll will not show up for you. The questions that we are asking people that are in the Zoom room are, do you have grass left to remove? What are you thinking of replacing it with? And how much does a $2 per square foot rebate influence your decision to remove grass? So go ahead, and that poll should pop up on your screen. If it doesn't, no worries. We'll go over the answers with you, but if you can participate, that would be excellent. Okay, we've got about half of our attendees that have taken the poll, so we're gonna give it just another minute to let people do that. And we're gonna give another 30 seconds or so. We see a hand raised. I'm assuming you might be having some questions regarding either tech or the polling. Remember to put your questions into the Q&A if that is what you need help with. Okay, so unfortunately, it doesn't look like Facebook Live is gonna work for us today. So let me read our poll results. We're going to go ahead and end the polling and show you all the results. So do you have grass left to remove? It's about 50-50, with a little more people that do have grass left to remove. What are people thinking of replacing it with? It looks like 41% of people say desert plants, about 15% of people say artificial turf, 7% of people say a veggie garden or fruit trees, and then 29% say a mix of the above. How much does a $2 per square foot rebate influence your decision to remove grass? People already removed it and missed out on the rebate, and that was about 37% of people. And the largest response, 44%, says they would not remove the grass if it weren't for that rebate. So that's good for us to know that those rebates matter. That's why we offer them. So we're gonna go ahead and try Facebook Live here one more time before we jump into our content. Let's wish us luck with this. I know there were a lot of people planning to watch on Facebook because they were not comfortable with Zoom, so I want to try and make that possible for them. I appreciate your patience. In the meantime, I can talk about our grass removal program. It's been around since 2014. It's extremely popular. Right now we do front yards, backyards, pretty much any grass you have in place. We work with a lot of homeowners associations, a lot of individual homeowners. It's a $2 per square foot incentive. You have to have grass available, you know, for us to essentially buy back through the incentive. If you already removed your grass, unfortunately, you are no longer eligible. And the rebate program is open to anyone within our boundary. And you have to have some sort of plants or either artificial turf or plants, trees, some sort of life in the area. We can't have just all concrete. And again, our rebate does cover artificial or synthetic turf, which is you know, more unique to these types of rebates. So thank you. We're gonna move on and get our panelists in here. I'm really excited about our lineup. We're gonna kick it off with Leisha Astorga. She's absolutely wonderful to work with. She actually helped Desert Water Agency plant our pollinator garden back about 2 years ago. And the students at Palm Springs High School were just delightful. She's been gardening in the Coachella Valley for more than 30 years, and she's currently the garden coordinator at Palm Springs High School teaching sustainable gardening. She specializes in native landscapes, wildlife habitats, vegetable gardens, and sustainable practices. Welcome, Leisha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm really honored that you guys asked me to speak here today, and I am super excited to be talking to you about my favorite native plants. I've chosen about 9 of them here. And the things that I look for when I'm looking for my plants are, first, if it's low water, low maintenance, and then if it's beneficial to wildlife. And lastly, if it's resistant to wildlife. And that seems like it's doesn't fall in line also with if it's beneficial to wildlife. But think of it this way. A good portion of our homes border the desert here in the Coachella Valley. So we're gonna have a lot of wildlife coming into our yards, like rabbits, for example. I have a problem with rabbits. So I want my plants to be able to provide a home and food and all of that. But I also don't want all of my hard work and effort and money to just go down the drain feeding a buffet to the rabbits. So those are the things that I look at, and those are going to be the predominant things of what I've chosen in these native plants here. So let's get started. My first choice here is one of my absolute favorite plants, the desert milkweed, rush milkweed, also Asclepia subulata. Now, I generally refer to it as Asclepia, so if I switch back and forth on that, I apologize. First, it's actually not, we always call it desert milkweed here in the area. That's actually not the name of it, it's rush milkweed. Desert milkweed is actually Asclepia erosa, which is up in the high desert. But for whatever reason, we tend to call all of our plants, as you'll see here, desert whatever. Desert lavender, desert mallow, desert milkweed. We tend to like the name desert. I could talk forever about this particular plant because it just does everything. It hosts so many different things. And best of all, it is the primary food source for the monarch butterfly caterpillar. It is the only food source, I should say. So no Asclepias, no monarchs. Also aphids. You want to look around for the aphids on here now. Everybody really freaks out about the aphids, but they are not going to transfer to your other plants. They are specific to this plant. It grows in washes. So you're gonna want to give it a good soak every once in a while. It grows about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. The density of it depends upon the pruning. So that's going to depend upon how much you prune it or the caterpillars. So this is what your seed pod looks like. This is a tarantula hawk on some of the flowers, and this is what the full-grown plant looks like. Next up, we have desert marigold. So these are just the various examples. You can see the bee on it, so obviously it's a pollinator. I love these tucked up under boulders, as you see here. It's got the silvery gray leaves, which is common in desert plants. The official bloom time is November or March to November, but I've never seen it not blooming if it's been watered. The spread is going to be a foot or two tall and wide, but you're also going to find that if it gets a little bit too tall, what it does is it just kind of falls over on itself and then it grows up again. Super easy to grow, likes any soil, sun, shade, reseeds readily, which is good because this is a biennial. So what that means is it's only going to grow about 2 years, but you're never going to know that it's gone because a new plant's going to have grown up and replaced it. Next up we've got is the desert Penstemon. You can see here that hummingbirds really love this plant. It's how you're going to know if it's a hummingbird favorite is if you look at the flower. See how that flower is like tubular there? That's going to tell you that that is a favorite of hummingbirds. Again, gray-green trend. If you look at those leaves there, it's going to get about 1 foot to 2 wide with these really, really tall 3-foot flower spikes. Vibrant hot pink. This one blooms, depending upon weather, about February into summer. Hummingbirds absolutely love it. I've never seen anything that is more rabbit resistant than the Penstemon. In this photo, you see some Gaillardia, blanket flower, Indian blanket planted with it, and down here, some golden dogbane. Next up, Indian mallow, or I'm sorry, not Indian mallow, apricot mallow. Indian mallow is a different plant. This one's really cool because we just don't see orange in the desert. Most of our desert plants are yellow. This is going to get to be about a 3 to 5 foot mound with about 2-foot orange spikes going. It likes full sun. It will do okay in partial, but it really, really likes full sun. It does come in other colors, but those aren't native. Purple, white, pink, all of those kinds of things, but those aren't native to our desert. Not that that really matters in this, it's the same water, all of that. But if you want specifically the native, it is the orange apricot mallow. This is the Tuberosa. The Tuberosa, not a great representation of it. What they've done here is they have pruned it in order to get the height. Traditionally, the Tuberosa is only going to grow about 2 to 4 feet tall with the same spread. It's more of like a sprawling ground cover, which is how I have mine. And that's what it's going to do if you don't really prune it. It's got this gorgeous flower. As you can see, another hummingbird favorite. It blooms year round. It's never really not going to be in bloom. During certain times of the year, it's going to have this little leaf on it. Other times, you're just going to have this, this stalk, again, this gray-green stalk. Tuberosa is Spanish for hummingbird. So that's another clue. It's a really beloved hummingbird plant. Most of these plants that I'm putting up here, actually I think all of them are pollinator plants. So they're all going to be favorites with birds, butterflies, things like that. Next up, we have desert willow. So this is one of our trees. It's in natural environment, it's going to be a shrub, which all of our desert trees are shrubs. We prune them into trees, preferably multi-trunk. It's going to be a small tree, so 15 to 30 foot. It's deciduous, so it's going to lose all of its leaves and flowers in the winter. Again, native to washes. So you see I'm saying that a whole lot. The reason for that is that, you know, we're not going to find plants growing in the middle of our desert because there's just no water there. We just don't get enough rainfall. But in our washes, we get that flooding that comes through. So the plants are able to soak, and that allows them to continue. They get enough water there in order to stay alive for a little while. Right here, you have a representation of a close-up of the flower. Also on this page, we have desert lavender. This one's really interesting. This is a salvia. So it's considered one of the healing plants. So the indigenous populations used it for healing. I don't know what else, you know, it was one of the sacred plants for them. We currently use it for like smudge sticks, that kind of thing, you know, incense. It's really nice to put in your, to take a leaf, to put in your water bottle, like your, which I'm going to take a drink of now. So if you put it in your water bottle, you have your lid closed. When you open up your lid, you're going to get that aroma from it. And then you're going to have a little bit of that taste in your water bottle, and it gives it a really nice, refreshing, clean taste in your water. This is a great sub for Texas Ranger. The traditional size of it is about 8 foot tall, 3 foot wide. Again, you can prune it in a head shape, not geometric shape, please no geometrics there. It grows pretty much in most soils here. It does like good drainage, so mostly sandy, gravelly soils. Bees love it, as you can see. Let's see, let's move on here. Evening primrose. Now this one, this is really cool. This is one of our nighttime pollinators. For this one, like see here, this gorgeous little flower, this one blooms at night, early in the morning. So this is going to be for your bats, for your moths, things like that. The plant's going to be about 1 foot tall with a 1 to 2 foot spread. Now, if you look over here on this plant though, that's about 5 foot. What's going on there is it's planted in my vegetable garden. So it's getting more water than what it traditionally would want. Now here, you're gonna see some other, here's the Gaillardia. So I mix these plants around a lot, as you can see. Here's one of the milkweeds. You've got desert marigold, you've got the penstemons here. You've got desert dandelion popping up, all of that going on. We move on to the next slide. Now here's deer grass. This is an excellent, excellent substitution for your invasives like fountain grass, that kind of thing. It's going to be about a 3 foot mound with these plumes here are going to be about 2 foot over that. It's going to tolerate pretty much any soil you throw at it. It does like to be planted along, well, I'm not sure how it likes it, but in its natural environment, it's going to be along along riverbeds. So like how I've got here, it's along a dry riverbed. It's really great for erosion control. Again, you can see here in the photo, I've planted it with all these other pollinators throwing in here. the mallow, the penstemon, the desert marigolds. Right here is what it looks like with more cut, if you cut it back and if you give it more water. This one is from my backyard and it doesn't have any water being added to it. So it's going to have more of that golden look to it. Here, our left side, I think Ashley was going to bring up our chat box here, so you could maybe take down notes on these plants. So right over here, these are our natives. These are all the natives that I just discussed. Now right here are our low water use plants. So these are the ones that I've talked about in here, but they're not necessarily native to our desert. They are low water use though. So you've got Gaillardia, which is also known as blanket flower or Indian blanket, the golden dogbane, or let me go back. So Gaillardia, now that's, there's two different types. Aristata, which is commonly known as blanket flower. That's gonna be a little bit taller. That's gonna grow 2 foot plus tall and wide. Pulchella, though, that's known as Indian blanket, a little bit different. And that's a little bit shorter. That's about a 1 to maybe 2 foot tall. And those were really vibrant, orange, yellow, you know, with the darker center. Dogbane, this one here, this one was the yellow, really low ground cover. It's about 6 to 10 inches tall with a 1 to 2 foot spread. Now, Scarlet Sage. This is one of my all-time favorite plants. It grows 2 to 4 foot tall, and it likes sun, shade, any soil you throw at it. It will just grow anywhere. You can cut it back to stimulate the growth. You can do that with the Gaillardia also. It goes from this beautiful red, scarlet red, to white, pink, you know, all different colors. And then the last thing I want to say on these is cacti. Don't be afraid to mix your flowering plants with your cactus. That's one of the coolest things about it. Your cactus bloom also. And if you look in nature, all of these things are mixed together. They don't section themselves off and have just cactus gardens, that kind of thing. So those were all of my plants here. Ashley?
Thank you so much, Leisha. That was an amazing presentation, and we've got a couple of really good questions. So I'm going to start off with a request for a holistic way to get rid of burrowing mice. Any quick advice on that?
Growing mice?
On getting rid of burrowing mice.
Oh. Well, I don't really know how to answer that.
Okay. It is a tough one. I know people don't like using chemicals or thinking about killing them always. So
the best are, okay, let me make sure I'm understanding. Are we saying mites or mice?
Mice.
Mice with a C.
Yes.
Okay. I have to say the kindest way, I think, if you're going to kill a mouse, is to with the snap traps. That is the kindest way to do it. It is an immediate, you know, sticky traps, things like that. Those are not.
But there's no like sprinkling cayenne pepper. Sometimes people do that with rabbits. I don't know that that works with the mice.
There are certain things that they don't like the taste of,
Mm-hmm.
but with mice, they're going to bite it in order to determine that they don't like the taste of it.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do with any plant, with any of these animals, whether it's any rodent, is to plant more of it than you want. So
Okay.
that's why you
Good
do
advice.
plants that read seed readily. So what you're going to do is you're going to offer some up to the rodent gods and say,
Yeah.
I've planted 5 of them. You can have 3 and I'll take 2.
I think that's a fair approach. Okay, couple other questions. Does the desert willow have any bad habits? You know, someone mentioned lifting sidewalks or sewer/water pipes. You know, planting trees very close to sidewalks or concrete is never a great idea. And roots do tend to do damage on pipes, but anything specific to desert willow?
I've never heard anything specific to desert willow. It's not like, say, a ficus that's invasive in your systems, things like that. The thing that most people just don't like about it is it's deciduous in the winter. You know, it loses all of its leaves. And if you want it as a tree, you are going to have to prune it more because its natural form is a shrub. And as you said, you never want to plant anything too close to your house or too close to sidewalks. Just any tree, because they do have large root systems.
Okay. We'll take the last question here. Does the desert marigold also help serve vegetable gardens as a companion plant?
It's not a true marigold, so it's not going to do the same job as true marigolds do, no.
Okay. And then I do have one last question about the best time to plant, but I think Bob and Sue are going to get into that pretty heavily in their presentation. Anything specific to natives regarding time of year to plant?
With natives, well, with the Coachella Valley, generally the best time to plant anything in the Coachella Valley is October. That gives it time before it gets too cold, which that's debatable on how cold it is in the Coachella Valley. But it gets before our first frost, and it gets it time to acclimate before summer gets here too. So September, October is for anything the best time. But for natives, if you're planting natives that we discussed here, they are much more forgiving. I'm transplanting natives right now, you know, and it's 100 degrees some days. If you're going to do that, you want to do it more in the evening so that it has overnight to get over that shock of transplant though.
Great tip. And then one last question popped in that I think is a good one. Any plants that help the migration of painted lady butterflies? I know when we talked earlier about milkweed, that's great for queen and monarch butterflies, but I'm not sure about painted ladies. Do you know anything about that, Leisha?
That would be the evening primrose.
Okay. Good to know. Evening primrose. All right. Well, you've been a wealth of information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So Dan Bond is joining us. He is with the Synthetic Turf Council, and he was so very kind to take the time to be here today. We really appreciate that. He is the president and CEO of the Synthetic Turf Council. And let me find his, I had his bio right in front of me here, and it's escaped me.
Oh, no worries. I can introduce myself.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing that.
Of course. Well, thank you, Ashley, and good morning, everyone on the presentation today. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm the president and CEO of the Synthetic Turf Council, and I'm going to talk a little bit about artificial turf in the southwestern U.S. environment. So today's presentation, I'm going to give an overview of STC, talk a little bit about artificial turf and desert heat, which we talked about a little bit in the first part of the panel discussion on the heat side, talk a little bit about pets and eco-friendly attributes, and go through a Q&A. So the STC is the world's largest organization representing the synthetic turf industry. We have now 271 members in 16 countries, mostly in the North American, Central America, and Europe countries. Our membership includes the entire supply chain: builders, landscape architects, manufacturers, suppliers, infill folks that produce the infill, and other specialty service companies. Regarding landscape and recreational turf, we recently developed a certification for landscape turf installers that you might be interested about. The program promotes best practices and installations, and we also have over 100 people that now have the designation, professionals that now have the CTIL designation. So if you're interested in installing artificial grass in your home or business, I encourage you to check out the member directory for a certified installer that's in your area. We also released this week, I wanted to highlight quickly, the 2020 North American Industry Report, which highlights the growing demand for landscape turf because of its water-saving solutions. Landscape applications that we found in the report are the fastest growing market segment for both residential and commercial buyers. The average homeowner spends about 150 hours a year maintaining his or her lawn, and landscape turfs helps those people gain more leisure time by eliminating some of the mowing and weeding and watering activities that need to be done with natural grass. Now, specifically on heat, landscape turf won't get as hot as concrete, rocks, patio furniture, or composite decking, but it will be hotter than natural grass. So a common analogy that I like to use is that in the direct sunlight during the summertime, it's going to get as hot as sand at the beach when you go there and in the summertime and enjoy yourself. So how warm it gets is based on the components in the system, including the sub-base yarn fibers and infill material. So for example, some of the yarn fibers include the types of materials that comprise the yarn fiber include nylon, which has a 428-degree melting point, polypropylene, which is 320 degrees, and polyester, which is 250. So in choosing a turf that's best for a desert climate like you're in, I encourage you to ask the manufacturer for testing data on the durability and ultraviolet protection properties. So as a homeowner, there's multiple strategies that you can use to lower the temperature of your synthetic grass. So I've listed a few of these out here. I'll just briefly highlight a couple. Obviously, selecting a lighter grass color is going to absorb less of the direct sunlight that you get for a majority of the year. Also using lighter colored infills and ones that retain less heat. Infills such as coated sand products can lower the temperature by as much as 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're talking about a substantial cooling of synthetic turf. You can install the artificial grass lawn under shady trees, use shaded cloths or retractable awnings as part of the lawn. And I encourage you to ask your installer about subsurface cooling systems. Many manufacturers and installers provide their own technologies that allow for cooling systems to be placed into the synthetic turf system. It's really remarkable what they're able to do now. Another option is to run a garden hose over the area right before you're about to use it. That'll lower the temperature, at least initially, as the moisture is evaporated off of the synthetic turf. So talking about pets and eco-friendly artificial turf, synthetic turf is a durable, low-maintenance alternative to conventional grass. Obviously, that's the position that we take. And it's increasing in popularity for use in front yards, backyards, play areas, and dog runs. So in hot, dry climates like the Southwest, synthetic turf provides a beautiful lawn in the middle of summer when not many things are as lush and green as a turf lawn would be. So talking about tripping hazards, lots of parents, when they put their kids out, I know I have two kids, when I put them out, and let them play, it's really difficult to ascertain what the uneven surfaces are on natural grass surfaces. When it's mowed, it's uniform in height and it's difficult to see unlevel ground. Same for dogs and pets. You want to make sure that you have a surface that's even, that allows for your pets to run around safely and not injure one of their legs. In addition to mobility assistance, children and adults that need mobility assistance, these types of play areas are among the public spaces covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. You know, talking about the chemicals that are required to keep a natural grass surface looking plush, artificial turf doesn't require things like fertilizer, herbicides, or pesticides to maintain that pet-friendly surface. In addition, many of you have dogs who are attendees, and if your dog likes to chew grass in your yard, using chemicals on your lawn can be a concern for them as well. You've got to make sure that the chemicals aren't present when your dog likes to chew up the grass. So I did want to highlight some products that are available. Many of them are vinegar and water based. You can research them, ask your installer about them, and maintenance folks. For areas where your pet likes to do their business, selecting the right type of infill can also lower the ambient temperature of the grass and limit bacterial growth. So I encourage you to ask the right questions, which you now know, when it comes to synthetic turf, the types of components in the system, including the infill, can take care of multiple concerns with the right product. So we do have a resource, Synthetic Grass 360. I wanted to put it out there. Ashley, if we can make the slides available to attendees at the end of the presentation, you don't have to write this long URL down for this resource. It's a free guide that highlights uses and benefits called Synthetic Grass 360. Features information about the use of synthetic grass in parks, playgrounds, private homes, and commercial areas. So I want to thank everyone again for the opportunity, Ashley, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I did want to let you know that we were not able to see your slides while you were speaking, but I think every point you got across well nonetheless. So if there are any photos you wanted to show quickly with your screen that we might have missed during your presentation.
Oh, sorry about that. I started the video.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
Yeah.
We did also get a question.
Yeah, why don't I make the slides available afterwards? I mean,
Perfect.
I know that we want to stay on track here for timing.
Fair enough. Will dog urine stain the synthetic turf? Is one of the questions we got.
It can, and it really all depends on the maintenance program that you have. So if you get your landscape turf installed, I would ask the installer about your specific climate and to make sure that you rinse well and keep it clean at all times. Obviously, when you put your pets out for doing their business, I would definitely rinse it, that area that your pet goes, and clean it off immediately afterwards. And that will limit any damage that might occur from something like that.
Good tip. Is synthetic grass porous?
The system itself is. So there's different components to it. I won't get into I'll do a 40,000 foot level. So there's the base of the system, which allows for water to go through. Then there's actually the backing and the yarn fibers themselves, and then the infill, which keeps the yarn fibers or grass standing straight up. So the entire system is porous. It allows for water to drain through. And I think one of the questions in the Q&A box asked about what happens if you find bugs or something underneath the carpet itself. The system itself allows for water to drain directly through, and it has a maximum rate of drainage that's based on the system. So that's another question that I would recommend that you ask the installer. If you do get monsoons or heavy rainfall during certain parts of the year, make sure you install a system that allows for the drainage so you don't have puddles and water bubbling up underneath the turf itself.
That's a great point.
Is right for the environment.
And, you know, one thing I wanted to remind people is that Desert Water Agency actually has some coupons with some artificial turf installers on our website. So if that's something you're looking into, dwa.org/coupons, and some pretty good discounts on there from 2 different local artificial turf installers. And as I mentioned before, you're also eligible on top of the coupon discount to get your $2 per square foot of grass that you removed. The other thing I would say is that even if you measure your square footage, just know that you have to buy a little bit more artificial turf than what you measure because of corners and rounding. That's one question we get all the time is the artificial turf people told me I needed 900, but my area is only 800 square feet. So that's a typical thing that they have to do is order a little bit extra because your yard isn't a perfect square rectangle.
And actually too, the installer can, if you hire a good installer, they can maximize the amount of square footage that you have and make sure that the grain, the way that the yarn, shows in one way or another, when the seams line up, that the grain goes in the same direction. So it makes it look like it's more natural grass than sometimes what natural grass looks like.
Yeah, it's amazing. Vicky, who's helping us today with tech support, was out doing an inspection and she sent me a photo of a yard and I said, that yard still has grass. They didn't remove the grass. And it was just really, really good synthetic turf. So
yeah, installs have been in the turf itself. When you get a good install, it really looks really nice.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm sorry we had a little trouble there with your slides, but we will make sure that people have access to those on our website. And we are going to invite our next group on the screen here, Bob and Suzanne Adamson. Both Suzanne and Bob are credentialed medical technologists, and for the last 28 work years, 16 for Suzanne, were involved in the on-site training of lab personnel for various hematology manufacturers. Suzanne has been gardening for most of her life, and Bob for about 30 years. And gardening became kind of all-consuming for them when they were certified as master gardeners in 2015. So Bob and Sue, I invite you to share your video, share your screen, so we can see those slides you put together.
Click. There you go. Click.
We can hear you. We can't see you yet or see your
I'm
slides.
trying to click it.
There
it
you
is.
go. Here, let me have it.
I want to say something. If you remove your grass and you have trees or shrubbery where the grass used to be, you must continue watering those plants because they will die, as several have in the neighborhood as they've slowly gotten rid of the expensive grass. But remember to continue to water those plants that were in the turf.
Let's see. There.
Okay.
Are we with you?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Ashley, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. We're rocking and rolling here. With all deference to Dan, we would like to say that plastic vegetables really aren't good. So we've kind of gotten into the grow it in the ground. And there are 3, by the way, I must say this is an incredibly abbreviated presentation here. We do not have the ability to get into a whole bunch of stuff in depth. So we're trying to do an overview, and we would certainly welcome questions, and I'll be really glad to answer anything that we can. The 3 W's for a successful garden is what, why, and when. The what is what should you grow? The question, why would you make the effort even to grow? And what's the best time? And trust me on this, the desert Coachella Valley area there is a good time and there is a bad time. The what, one of the key questions is, what do you like to eat? Now look, guys, if you don't like rutabagas, don't grow rutabagas. You grow the things that you really want to eat.
The other thing is when you start out gardening, limit yourself to 3, 5, 7 different kinds of vegetables, because if you do what I did and plant everything you can think of, you're very overwhelmed.
What do your kids like to eat? If you have kids, don't plant something that they can't stand.
We got carrots. Kids love carrots. They love the garden peas. They're so sweet. And if you tell them that they're too young to eat broccoli, they might want to eat the broccoli.
They will eat the broccoli as long as you tell them that they're not old enough for it. I just stuck this in because we've started doing this in the last few years, and that is we've been storing some of the food, freezing some of the vegetables, dehydrating some of them, and it's working out very, very well for us. So why would you make the effort to grow your own food?
Well, the flavor is so different from fresh out of the garden to at the store. And the nutrients every plant loses its nutrients the longer it's out of the ground. So if you pull it and eat it that day, you'll be full of good flavor and nutrient.
It's interesting, if you have an off-the-vine tomato, the flavor actually pops in your mouth rather than a lot of the tomatoes that you get in the store have been picked. They're not fully ripe. They have some green on them, and they mature en route to the store. I'm not saying the stores are bad. I'm just saying that if you want a really flavorful tomato, grow your own tomato, and you will be astounded at what the flavor is like. And the fresh, right out of the garden, Susie goes out and clips lettuce and onions and things for salads, and it's quite different. You will find that you will eat more. You'll eat more healthy. The nutrition will be greater for you, and you will save dollars. One of the things I want to point out here is we're not talking rocket science here. And I'm not demeaning or belittling this, but you put a seed in the ground, you take care of it, it grows. It's going to reward you. It's going to pay you back. You're going to get a return for what you've done in the ground. And it's not particularly, it's a good thing it isn't very difficult, because then soon I'd have a real problem with it. The other thing that's very nice is that you make the decision what you're going to plant and when you're going to plant it, and what you're going to eat, and all of that. So there are so many pluses to growing vegetables that are really it's really worth it. The other thing is we particularly like to share. We have a number of friends in the area. We share the fruit of the garden with them.
And they're vegetarians, so they're very happy to get it.
And you have neighbors. You got to be careful if neighbors find out you have a functioning vegetable garden. They'll become very friendly with you very soon. Your family, you can pass them on. Every time we go visit the kids, we always take a bag full of stuff, and they're very appreciative. And it's personally very therapeutic. Two parts to the therapy is the working in the garden is extremely therapeutic. Sue and I were talking one day about the fact of how healthy kind of it is getting your hands in the soil and doing what you need to do. And the other thing is the the preparation is very therapeutic. Sharing is therapeutic. So where are we here? Here we go. So when is the best time to grow? This is one of the trickiest parts of the whole thing. The Coachella Valley has a very unique set of weather patterns, shared only, to my knowledge, by 2 or 3 of the cities in Arizona, and even a good portion of it in the Coachella Valley is unique to the Coachella Valley. We have a distinct winter time, and we have a distinct summertime. And because of the temperatures that occur in the Coachella Valley, there are many things that do not do well from about June through about the end of September, right in September there. And you need to be wise in what you're doing. One of the things that we look at is the annuals versus the perennials. There are annuals, there are biannuals, and then there are those that they call perennials. If a plant will last 3 seasons or more, it's considered a perennial. Biannual, obviously 2 years. Annuals, 1. And we plant tomatoes fresh every year. We do have an eggplant that, interestingly enough, has been with us, what, three years?
3 solid years.
3 years now, and which is very kind of unusual. But this year it has just shot us out eggplant like crazy.
An example of perennials would be artichokes and asparagus, and of course our eggplant. But the annuals would be stuff like carrots. You plant them, pull them out, and that's the year. Green beans, peas, that kind of stuff are all annuals.
Annuals are, I guess, one of the things you could say is they're one and done. You get your one season, and you're done with them.
What's the next one? Okay, cool season. Cool season here is from late September through early May, and that's when you plant the green things, lettuce, that kind of stuff, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. They all do well here. All different kinds of cabbages do really well. In fact, Savoy cabbage is so pretty, I think it should be in the front yard. Tomatoes manage to be halfway between the cool season and halfway between the hot. The best thing for tomatoes in the winter is to find a spot with a big pot where it gets lots of sun all day long. Now, once it gets to this time of year, you're going to want those tomatoes to only get the sun from when the sun comes up till 11 o'clock, or they'll fry. And they really do. Even cactus fry in our full sun. So tomatoes are sort of, again, halfway between cool season and the warm season, which would be green peppers, zucchini, eggplant, watermelon with lots of water. We may not do that here. Cantaloupe with medium water. But tomatoes, as I said, halfway in between. In the winter, they get full sun, and from this time on, they only get sun in the morning to be successful.
We are in the low desert, which means our warm season is actually hot. And the Coachella Valley gets really, really hot. And if Sue and I decided about 3 years ago that in the summer we would try a couple of things, but we elected not to put any sort of a shade situation over our gardens. But if you want to grow in the summer, you really need to have some way to protect those things, because, like Sue said, they will fry. They will fry. All right. If you have any gardening questions, and I have this slide at the end again. There's a email helpline, ANRMG Indio. Just briefly, ANR stands for Agriculture. What is the rest of it? I just I had it.
Nature and resources.
Resources, and MG is Master Gardener, and Agriculture, Natural Resources. That's what it is. Agriculture and Natural Resources. And there is a website where you can go and get books. You can get all kinds of things to help you with your gardening.
But you need to remember, everything is exactly pretty much opposite of any other part of the country. Questions?
Wonderful. We have a lot of questions for you, actually, so that's very exciting. So one of the ones I knew we would get, are there any plants that can be successfully started at this time of year? And when you and I talked about this before, we thought maybe we could encourage folks to look at some indoor herb gardening this time of year.
Yes, that is good. The windowsill is a wonderful place above your sink or, other windowsills with the morning light for all of them. Let's see, sweet basil, it makes you want to cook Italian. And then there's rosemary that is delightful. If you shove it in under the skin of chickens and stuff, it adds really nice flavor.
Cilantro?
Cilantro. Oh, we love cilantro because we make a lot of salsa because we grow a lot of tomatoes. And sage, which makes wonderful flavor for dressings for that holiday turkey coming up.
But we are getting into the season now where the raised bed gardens are not going to be very productive. And
yeah, I think that's good for people to remember is,
bring some things inside.
And maybe start,
like
get your feet
inside.
wet. Yeah.
I wanted to say one other thing. Growing in the winter is terrific. It's wonderful. But there's a phenomenon that you need to be aware, and that is you plant in like September, and they grow like gangbusters. The middle of December, my birthday is the 21st. That is the winter solstice. There is less light that day than any other day. And so what happens is the plants all just go into what they call a lull time. Now, what we did, and a lot of people that we know have done, when that happens, they start throwing water and fertilizer and everything at it. Please just understand, the plants just don't have enough light to do it. And then about the middle of January, they take off again.
Good tip. Good tip. Okay, so we have a couple more questions. I know we're officially at 11:30, so if folks have to jump off, we totally understand. Thank you so much for joining us. I am going to throw up, we have a closing poll here that I'm going to throw up for those of you that have to go ahead and leave. We have a wrap-up poll, so I'm going to launch that, and if you can answer some questions while we're talking. One of the questions, ground, pots, raised bed, what's the best way to grow in the desert? And
wow. Well, pots are just raised beds. They're just small. And we elected to use some cement block, and we've made 3 really, the 4 by 16 foot long raised beds. But you get sort of the same situation. With the pots, you can control it really, really well because it's a small situation. But
you do need a pot size about 12 to 16 inches wide at the top for a tomato plant.
Yeah.
That makes sure that they have enough soil for the roots, and as you keep the nutrition coming, they will grow really well. The herbs do not need that deep a soil, so you can have fun with them. You can get old lunch boxes, which really look cute with plants in it. Old bread baking things, they hold really nice group of herbs. So finding a pot has to do with the root size of what you're going to get.
The size of the pot, Ashley, particularly with tomatoes, the rule is bigger is better, because the root system in the plant will be very happy if it's got a lot of room. You put it in a little 2-quart gizmo and you won't be happy with the results you get.
Very good. One thing I wanted to share with you is that our poll results are in, and 100% of people said that they learned something new today. So I think that's
wonderful.
Pretty incredible. So one last question before we go. Someone is having trouble with pepper and tomato plants. They are spindly, so they have the leaves at the bottom are falling off. Any suggestions, or perhaps a good time to put up your last slide again so they can get help and send pictures? Because I know you always do best when you have photos to look at.
Generally, both the tomatoes and the peppers, once it gets really, really hot, they need more water. Not heavy water one day, light water the next. They need consistently more water. That keeps your tomatoes and your peppers from cracking with the excess water.
Let me say one thing about those are both nightshade plants, okay? And there is a phenomenon that goes on with that is really interesting. Those plants draw nematode worms, little tiny nematode worms. And my question to that person, my question would be, how long have you planted, how many seasons have you had the tomato plant in that area? Because if you have a tomato plant, there will be nematode worms, and I'm not talking about taking over the world or anything like that, but they will be there.
Microscopic.
But what you need to do, and we do this in our gardens, is you move the plants each season to another one so those nematodes don't get a chance. So what happens, it sounds like the description that they gave, it kind of reminded me that may be what the situation is, because the tomato plants, they get kind of spindly and they don't put out a lot of fruit. Same thing with the peppers. That's another nightshade plant.
And then, is it possible to overwater veggies in a desert raised bed? I'm guessing yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. You can.
Good drainage is important for every single plant. And if you mix your soil in your bedding plant, you need to have it so it's loose.
Yeah.
It's not compacted like clay or anything like that.
Yeah.
And one of the joys of having loose soil is the weeds pull out easy. And so do the carrots.
One of the reasons we went to the raised beds, which is a completely another talk, is because we basically gardened for about 4 years in the sand. And it was, we spent so much money on amendments to put in the sand so the plants would grow. We just decided, heck with this, and we set up the raised beds. We've been ecstatic with those things.
Okay, a couple more questions since you guys are willing to stick around. I appreciate that. Someone asked a great accessibility question. If they're in a wheelchair or a walker, do you have any suggestions on gardening a little more accessibly?
We do. Our raised beds are two cement blocks high. If you go 3 high, wheelchair access is much easier. You can reach over almost to the center of the bed. The other thing you can do is you can make the bed a little less wide. Instead of 4 foot, you would come back to like about 3 foot, about a 3 foot wide bed, and that makes it even easier.
Both Bob and I have bad backs. Bob's got new knee and new hip, and I'm going to get mine. So the raised beds work for our disabilities, and I'm sure that they will help others with their disabilities.
We're waiting for the new brain to show up.
Uh-oh, I don't know about that. Well, thank you guys. We have a persistent person. Can you plant tomatoes now if you keep them in the shade? Someone really wants to grow right now.
Okay. Big box stores have tomato plants.
Yeah.
It is the wrong time of year.
Yeah, it is.
But if you go and get them and make sure they get no afternoon sun, because it's too hard on them. So the morning sun, and yes, you can probably plant already started transplants. But if you want a huge crop of tomatoes, you're going to have to do a shade structure.
They're not going to be super happy, but you can get it done. If tomatoes are that important to you, yes, you can do it.
Wow.
But there will be some work involved. You know,
That's
the nice
inspiring.
thing, the nice thing about gardening in the winter is everything is just natural. I mean, it just happens. And you don't have to worry about all of this and putting up the shade and all of that. So, you know, it's
But right now, the big box stores have tomato plants like crazy.
yeah, and it's really
So-
interesting.
So get some and give it a try. I mean,
Always
I've
good to
tried-
jump in and at
Yeah.
least give it a go. Like you said,
Yeah.
maybe get
Morning
your feet wet
sun
with
only.
herbs, try the
Mhm.
tomatoes, and just be willing to perhaps
do
fail.
grow marigolds around your tomatoes to keep the worms down. There's a wonderful a hummingbird moth that comes out at night, and it lays her eggs at the bottom of your tomato plant and then brings the larvae come up, and they're about the size of my finger, and they will eat your tomato plants
Yeah.
bare naked in a day.
Yeah,
So
we lost a few.
watch your plants. And I know it's awful. At first, I sort of pulled them off and let them go somewhere, but they hump back to the plant. So now I step on them.
Okay, so we're going to get down to our last two questions here. One, I planted a raised garden with organic soil, and the tomato plants are 6 feet tall, but the fruit is only golf ball size.
Depends on the variety.
Yeah, what
Same
variety?
with the red and green peppers, only getting
Yeah.
golf ball size. Is there something
More
different I need to
nutrition,
do?
Yeah,
more,
yeah.
more nitrogen,
Yeah.
more manure, that kind of stuff. If you're going to
Yeah.
do
Feed it
Feed 'em.
more. Yeah, it needs more food.
Okay, and then this one I think actually might be a great one for Leisha. What is your experience with growing Moringa oleifera? The trees with the really, really big pods. I've seen a couple of them out here. Do you have any tips or recommendations on that?
Did you say moringa?
Yes.
I've not grown moringa personally. I know other people who do. It's supposed to grow super, super easy here. As I said, I don't have any experience with it though.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen it sparingly. You know, we go out to a lot of yards to look at these conversions, and I've only seen it a couple times. We do have a wonderful book available if you are looking for plants. It's called Lush and Efficient.
excellent
And
book.
Yeah, we have that. Yeah, it's
we
an excellent
actually
book.
free copies online, free hard copies. Once our office reopens, you're welcome to come down and pick one up.
Yeah, I think
Really
we have two.
Yeah, really good information, not only about the plants, but how to care for them, you know, best practices. So just wanted to remind everybody of that free resource. And then as we wrap up here, just share our information at Desert Water Agency. If you do want to move forward and take out some grass to put in some native plants, or even some desert water-friendly plants, artificial turf, or a garden like we talked about, please go ahead and email us any questions you have, or go ahead and submit your application online for those 51% of you that still have some grass to get rid of.
Can I add
So,
something real quick on the tomatoes?
oh, yes.
Yes.
Sorry. Right now for tomato plants, one of the reasons their tomatoes might be small is the heat. So because
Right.
we've gone from very hot to cool temperatures, tomatoes won't fruit after a certain temperature.
That's
So
correct.
105.
That's correct.
particular. They're very particular on their temperature. So if it gets above, I think it's 95 degrees.
It's 105. It's 105. At 105, the pollen stops functioning.
And I think it's below 60 something.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
The exception to that tends to be here in my experience, the yellow pear tomatoes.
Oh,
Those tend to produce year round. So if you're going to put in a tomato plant right now, which I personally wouldn't suggest because you're just going to be putting a lot of water on something that
That's right. That's
most
right.
likely isn't going to survive. If you're going to be doing it, do not expect to get tomatoes from it. It's not physically possible for that plant to produce tomatoes until you're looking at October. But if you have a tomato plant that is already established, you can keep it over the summer, possibly with the right conditions, and then it will start producing again come fall.
A lot of protection. Yeah, most of the cherry tomato varieties do very well in the valley here. But if you're looking to grow a nice beefsteak tomato, it probably isn't going to happen.
So sorry for betting in on that.
No, that's
okay.
great. Leisha,
Gardeners
yeah,
are great.
Leisha
Yeah, no.
is a wonderful vegetable gardener as well. So good to take advantage of that resource. My only contribution to the gardening world is my one little cucumber plant outside. So, well, thank you all very much for your time and expertise.
It was a joy.
And if you have any questions of our panelists, shoot me an email and I'll connect you with them. They're all very helpful and very eager and willing. So it's a wonderful opportunity to access a wealth of information right now. And I hope everyone out there is staying well and, you know, both physically and mentally. And if you ever need anything, you know, just give us a shout. We're happy to help, and you can connect with us on social media as well. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have our email, Ashley?
Yes.
I do.
You do?
I do.
Okay,
Bob.
very good.
I'll connect you with anyone who asks.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, thank you, everyone.